Hello everybody, welcome to another episode of Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. For this episode, we're going to be reading from the October 27th, 1849 edition of the Knickerbocker magazine, and it's probably one of the most famous horror stories ever written. So let's jump right into the fall of the House of Usher. The mansion known as the House of Usher is said to be a crumbling relic of former grandeur that stands upon a dreary lake. Its gray walls are cracked and overgrown with ghastly vegetation. In fact, it almost appears to be a part of the tarn itself, which surrounds its base with dank moss. The only way to access this home is through a drawbridge that rumbles ominously with every tremor of the ground. Even the name Usher is said to strike fear into the hearts of all who hear it. When our narrator was young, he used to visit his friend Roderick Usher often. He would always find entertainment in the gloom of his friend's strange tales and dark fancies. But something was different about their latest meeting. Roderick seemed incredibly anxious and fearful about his twin sister Madeline's recent illness. She had fallen victim to a strange catalepsy, which is a state where the body becomes rigid, the muscles become tense, and the breathing and pulse rate slows dramatically. As Madeline lay in her bed, she looked as if she were dead, but doctors couldn't find any signs of mortality within her. They believed her to be in some sort of death-like state instead. Roderick was so worried for his sister that he invited his old friend to come to his house and keep them company until she recovered. Our narrator readily agreed, and when he arrived at the House of Usher, he saw how far its decline had progressed. The once grand halls were now choked with weeds and covered in cobwebs. It was clear that no one had lived here for many years, and yet Madeline's bedroom was decorated with flowers and kept immaculate, as if waiting for her return. As the days passed, Madeline grew weaker and weaker, until one night, her brother woke our narrator to tell him that she had finally passed away. Together, they carried her down the stairs and placed her in the family vault beneath the house. Because she still showed some signs of life, however, they decided to wait 2 days before closing up the tomb. Then they would hold her funeral and lay her to rest. After sealing the vault, our narrator noticed that the sounds of the wind and rain seemed to be coming from inside the house. He pointed this out to Roderick, but his friend simply dismissed it as nonsense. Every time our narrator looked toward the window, though, he saw more and more cracks appear in the glass. Some of them were small, while others gaped open like the sockets of some monstrous, skeletal thing. Whenever he turned away, the openings would slowly heal over until he looked back again. To distract himself from these disturbing sights, our narrator began to read aloud from a book of poems. He tried his best to sound cheerful, but the more he read, the more his voice cracked and wavered. Finally, he closed the book and admitted to Roderick that he felt an overwhelming urge to leave the house immediately. His friend understood, although he begged our narrator to stay just a little longer. Then suddenly, there came a loud crashing sound from above, as if someone or something were falling through the roof. This was followed by a low, dragging sound that seemed to crawl over the floor like a burrowing animal. When our narrator described what he heard, Roderick became hysterical and paced around the room wildly. Then they both heard a scratching noise, like claws on wood. The sound was coming from behind one of the tapestries that adorned the wall. Roderick's face drained of color, and he tore the tapestry down to reveal a small, arched doorway hidden behind it. The scratching continued from within. It was slow at first, but gradually became more frantic. Suddenly, it stopped altogether. Roderick screamed, "God help us," and fell to his knees in front of the opening. Just then, the floor beneath them began to shake violently. Our narrator braced himself and watched in horror as the entire room started to collapse. Stones rained down from above, and the walls crumbled inward. They could feel the cold air of the outside world as the opening grew larger and larger. Roderick and our narrator clung to each other as the ceiling gave way completely. Vines from the lake reached into the room and wrapped themselves around their bodies. For a moment, our narrator thought he might escape. A ray of light shone in through the hole in the ceiling, and he saw the top of the drawbridge above him. But just as he was about to reach for it, the house shuddered one last time. It had been mortally wounded. Our narrator cried out as rocks crashed down around him, and the water of the lake filled his lungs. When he opened his eyes again, he found himself lying on the shore. Looking back at the house of Usher, he saw that it had vanished beneath the waves. The only thing left behind was a small island of cracked and broken stonework. And then our narrator noticed something else. Laying on the ground beside him were the lifeless forms of Roderick and Madeline Usher. Their faces were pale and gaunt, and the girl's long black hair had been matted with blood. The twins had escaped the collapsing house, but only to die on the shore. Then our narrator noticed something even more disturbing. As he tried to sit up, he saw that his own skin was gray and covered in blood. He ran to a nearby pond and stared at his reflection. His face was no longer his own. It had become horribly distorted, like a waxen mask pulled taut across his bones. With a final scream, our narrator collapsed to the ground and died, becoming the newest member of the cursed Usher family. And there you have it, folks. That was The Fall of the House of Usher by Edgar Allan Poe. And now it's time for everyone to vote in the poll. Which character was your favorite? Was it A, our narrator, B, Roderick Usher, or C, Madeline Usher? Let me know your thoughts on the story too. What did you think? Also, if you liked this episode, please hit the thumbs up button below and share it with a friend. I'll see you next time for another scary story. Until then, remember, don't read this story in the dark or you'll never make it through.